The hypertext transfer protocol came into existence. This, by the way, is a picture of the very first web page that was ever created and served up by the CERN web server. So at about the same time as we were dealing with the need for threads so that we could do Lotus Notes, we were also seeing that people wanted to write applications that were based on web interfaces. So in V3R7, we created the very first web server that ran on OS 400, which was the web server that came out of the people who created web serving in the first place, out of Switzerland, the CERN-based web server. So we put it on V3R7, but you could only have one server. And as anybody who does application programming in today's modern web world knows, that's simply not enough. So in V4R1, we allowed you to have multiple versions of this CERN server. But what happened in the industry was that the folks who invented web serving and research decided they weren't going to continue to maintain and enhance. Even though they had created the very first web server, they didn't want to get into the business of creating all the innovations that were going to happen around web servers. And so the open source world was born because people out there in the world wanted to take advantage of this for web serving and other applications. They said the community could create a web server that would be able to evolve new technology over time. And so the Apache-based web server was out there in the open world, and we integrated that into IBMi's, well, into AS400's V4R5, right before we became i5 OS. Okay, so we are now in the days where we have the Apache-based web server on iSeries, never on AS400, on iSeries. And that Apache-based web server continues to be the thing that drives our open source, or sorry, our web serving based things. It benefited from multi-threading. It also drove requirements for several things, including the thing I've already talked about, TerraSpace, okay? Because as you create a piece of work that comes in from the web, you don't have a need most of the time to have all of the stuff that's going on in that web program get stored on storage. It may do something in the database that needs to get stored in storage, but most of the operation that it's doing doesn't. And so it needs temporary storage that gets implemented in TerraSpace. Okay. We also had the need for digital certificates because the people who are connecting from the outside world didn't necessarily have user IDs and profiles. So we still had to have a way to prove that the system should trust them to do whatever operation they were doing. So we had to invent a digital certificate architecture, which I don't have time to go into. And we also had to create this whole thing called a server architecture, which is now used extensively within the operating system to deal with the fact that requests could be coming in of various flavors, and depending on what they came in with and what protocol was being used, it would get handled by different servers. Maybe it's a database operation, maybe it's a web, maybe it's a web service, maybe it's a who knows what. So we had to create a whole architecture for that.